Hello, my name is Kate Taylor and I'm the Landscape Coordinator for the Dawson Catchment Coordinating Association. We have recently completed several on-ground projects for 2023-24, working with various landholders across the Dawson Catchment. These projects have focused on increasing ground cover and plant diversity, enhancing soil water infiltration and improving soil health at their project sites. In this presentation, we will hear from Myles Ballentine and Jerome Leray from InFarm, who presented at our What's Happening Over the Fence event. They will discuss the work completed at Namgoori in Banana in Queensland in December 2023. So thank you for tuning in today.
We're Myles and Julie Ballentine near Banana in central Queensland. We did a project which was basically using natural sequence farming techniques on our pasture cropping land. We identified that there were problems that we needed to address, which we'll go into later in the slides, and thought that it would be a good fit for our operation. So I open the first slide that we've got here was a bus tour that we two-day bus tour that we hosted the second day of earlier in the year, and what you can see there is one of the banks. That particular one was 2.3 k's long, and you can see through there that was once all very bare country, which was renovated in a separate time. However, what was is that that's a high flow water area, and you can see that bank there is significantly higher than it is over here. And so as part of the project that is lower, the bank had to be higher to combat the water stress that was there. You can see the Lucina there and the heifers coming to have a look to see what's going on. So how much water has been lost off a farm? So our total project area was 270 hectares, and the 80 hectare catchment above the top bank, which was around 15 to 35 degree slope, so quite steep. A 15 millimetre rain event worked out to be 40 megalitres, so 40 million litres of water that would fall in that one rain event. Given the steep terrain that's indicated in that photo, we can assume that there'd be 20% infiltration, which might actually be pretty generous on that land, which leaves around 80% runoff. That means there's 32 million litres or 32 meg of water in a 50 mil storm that can be captured, or alternately, as it was, would be running down into gullies, and if it's slowed down enough in the grass, that's great. However, it certainly wasn't going to be on the ridge lines. So currently we're at our rolling 12 months is 620 mils for the year, and that's 369.8 megalitres of water retained per year just on that area, that 80 hectares. And so the total project area of 270 hectares is 1,755 megalitres that we've been able to slow down, take the energy out, have it infiltrate into the soil. So here's an example, just to give people an idea of actually how much rain falls on 1 square metre of land. And so you can see they're 44 gallon drums, so 205 litres for each one of those. So on 650 mil rainfall over 12 months, where 1 millimetre of rain equals 1 litre of water per square metre, so that's 615 litres that falls on every square metre. So that area. Now what most farms use is about 30% of that, and they lose most of it through either runoff or evaporation, through not having enough land covered. And so that's how much actually the average farm, obviously some are going to be more, some are going to be less, but that's how much gets utilised. So if we can maximise that to, maybe we can get to there, and if things go really well, imagine if we could hold on to all of it. And so how much more production that we can have. So just so people know, that is a paddock of chickpea that have been harvested. So it doesn't leave much ground cover. So we'll come in after that with the cover crop and put more biomass ground cover onto the paddock. So what we had, this is a property of our home block, where that's the hill at the back of our place. So it's quite steep where the last photos were. Now it's quite rugged through there. It's great on a mountain bike. However, the water would gain velocity coming down and is causing issues down on our cultivation down below. You can see we've got issues through here. Now, just to put contour banks into here and drain that water away into this channel would be less effective than we'd like. So what we've decided to do was go right up here, and we've done some remediation work onto some bearer country to lift production, but also to help issues that are happening down here. And so because we owned the catchment that we're actually dealing with, we had the opportunity to deal with that. So from the top of the hill to the bottom of the project area is 123 vertical metre drop over a 750 metre distance. And the project area goes from this boundary right around to almost to this one here. So the problem that we faced is the water that fell gained velocity quickly and was not infiltrating effectively on the pastures, and in turn creating problems further down the cultivation paddocks. There was a poor functioning soil high in the landscape of Namgoori, poor mineral cycle, poor microbial cycle, poor water cycle, which means there was much less pasture to utilise, therefore production. Less pasture means less diversity and less production, less landscape hydration. So this is at the base of the hill of the photo that just showed. There's the buggy down there, and that's steep enough that you need to put it into low to get it up to this high spot. And so this had been overgrazed for many years. And so what we decided to do, this is a project before the DCCA project. As you can see the fence post there, we put a single wire to keep down there to keep the livestock off. And then we also are able to produce we have some microbes and minerals called Brix Booster, which I failed to mention in the introduction. We put that over the top to slow down the water flow, to stimulate the ground, but also some hay to slow down the water flow, but then putting the microbes and minerals on there, which allow it to start feeding this soil. You can see it's quite shaly. You can see where it is. It's quite bare through there. You can dig it up and put it on a road. That's what it's like. So just make notice of that little tree there, or big tree. There it is there. So this is a bit over 12 months later. And so you can see it's still, that's quite that soil, which, takes a fair bit to get functioning. However, been able to kickstart the process there. So now it's got a functioning mineral cycle, functioning microbial cycle, and functioning water cycle. Now, this is where all the issue was started with what was happening down on the cultivation further. This is some of the remediation work that we happened to do below that last photo. And so it was done by whatever equipment we had on hand. So this is a single ripper there, dropping some seed out the top. And so then we just went through with a firefighter in a tank and just sprayed it into these rip marks. And that was enough just to kickstart the process. Because often we can rip country, but there'll be no response. So we just need a little bit of a kickstart to get things going. Now, it doesn't automatically start. Oh, and seed was put in as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that grass pops up straight away. You'll get pioneer plants like roly-poly and less desirables. However, it will start the process going. This is also was on a roughly a 15-degree slope, so quite difficult to get things going. But also we wanted to graze it to be able to get production off that same land at the same time. Here's an example of full mineral cycles and water cycles in plants. You can see this was used with anhydrous ammonia. I think it was around 400 units per hectare. You can see the lateral roots here that have just gone through in. It was growing plants. However, just the water was not infiltrating the way it should do. And so by using excessive chemicals and fertilisers, it really does smoke the soil. That was taken in North Dakota, and this is our own paddock where we were having pasture dieback was an issue. Now this is the Leucaena through there. I suspect that it's high. We're getting the fungal to bacterial balances coming to the fungal side, and therefore is better for trees, but not so much grass. So we've done things to remedy that. And that's that same paddock of the Leucaena, but that's also one of the banks. And that's an example on the left there of a cropping country with a good cycle. So even though I just said that the fungal bacteria ratio can go either way in the wrong order, the one on the left, all that fungus there is breaking down the organic matter. And so in cultivation, because we work in the country so much, it's really quite a struggle to get that level up. Where pastures, it's quite easy, or it's a lot more easy to be able to achieve that. So with all of that in mind, we worked out that we needed to get on the steep terrain, needed to be able to get the water out of the gutters, which you can see one going through there, and stop it flowing and just push it sideways onto the ridge lines. Now, having done the natural sequence farming course with Stuart Andrews and some work earlier with Peter Andrews many years ago, which is another story, which was very successful, we came across Jerome at a field day that was locally. And Jerome really works on using more of a technical point of view. And we had him do some LiDAR of our property, which we wanted for the cultivation areas. But also Jerome really has a keen interest and skill set in pastures as well. And so using the skills of Jerome, we were able to come up with a plan going forward. Now, with the software that he'll talk through later, we're able to look at different catchment areas and work out ways that flow in the landscape, but then we can then say, okay, well that catchment area is just flowing down to a creek. Okay, let's catch that water, push it over to this ridge line here, and it'll potentially flow into a dam. And so that's the idea of one of the ideas that can be worked out with there. And also having a talented contractor to build these banks is also very beneficial. So here we are. This is the construction of the bank. So we used a contractor from Bralabar who was very talented. He's done a number of projects, and as well as on his own place. So after the doing all of the mapping work on the computer, it's a matter of getting down there and doing it with the laser level. So that's what we're doing there, which is quite a challenge going through the Leucaena there, because it's quite hard to see more than sort of 10 metres with the long grass. You can see how dry it was though at the same time. And this is building a new area, even though it may look relatively flat. That's a hill, and we've found that that's to be dead level, It was like a big circle around there. And so once they're constructed, it's a great opportunity to put seed in. And so with the bricks booster, there's an option of doing a seed coat, and that's what's happened there. So there's a mixture of different things in there. There's butterfly pea, there's desmanthus. It's basically whatever's in the shed or whatever you want to find. There's grass seeds, there's panics, butterfly pea. You can see some blue bits there. We had some sorghum left over from one of the plantings, so we threw that in as well. We weren't overly concerned about it. However, it is a great opportunity to get legumes into your pastures because they don't compete so well. So if you get them in, you've got these big long runs of, say, Progatis, a butterfly pea in there. They set seed, cattle come along, they chew it, they walk out, some falls out of their mouth, some passes through them, they're in a nice big cow pat to be able to spread. On the right is the microbial chelated minerals of Bricks Booster. So that's what gets sprayed on. It helps stimulate those bare patches and get some growth starting. Because we can't always go in and rip all the country. Sometimes it's just not feasible. So we can get some sort of growth going just by putting those on to stimulate the ground. This is this bank here is a 1.6k long bank, and so it the way it was going, I was coming along here to the base of the hill. It was supposed to go to the other boundary, but the landscape tells us otherwise what's going to happen. And so I was coming up with the laser level, thinking somewhere around here would have been as far as the dozer went. Little did I know, Paul, the contractor, said, hey, there's a runner up here, which we can see from this angle, that has been running, collecting water through cattle pads and probably wildlife in there as well. Let's see if we can catch on to that. And so, which is what happened. We put this bank up, and then the water in a heavy storm, or any storm, because you can see how steep it is, caught here and then pushed it back into this bank, which is this one here, and back into where it can be spilt onto another ridge line. Now below that, it's quite, there's some bare patches. It's taken the pressure off it, where we can remedy that, where it's not getting the high velocity water. And we did have a 90 mil/hour storm in about 2 hours, which came off this country, so we can imagine how much water that actually was. But what happened was, because this was dead level, it just spilt out over the top nice and even and left it well intact. So it just worked perfectly, as well as the spillways. So this is after that same big downpour, where you can see that it's holding the water up. And on the left here, there's a spillway there, where it's just holding the water. There's another one there. There'll be one down below that isn't shown. But also, you can see by the shape of the bank to be dead level, there's a gully through there. So the bank's been built up, higher there, not quite so high there. And so it's roughly in this area here, from the top of the bank to the base of the channel, is around 400 mil, 400 to 500 mil, which will settle out a bit as well. The majority of the water will infiltrate within hours. And you can see that's that same area just through there. Here's an example of one of the banks as well. It's grassed up nicely with all the being able to put the stimulants on there. So it looks very, very subtle in the way it is, but it's still around the 400 mil through there. Obviously a fence line, single wire. So it would be lovely to be able to exclude the cattle off there. However, we don't have the luxury of not making money. So we still need to get on there, put the stimulants on, put the grass on, get the grass going, put the seed on, and keep things ticking along. But fortunately, it was a relatively good season. We think it's wet because we've had so many dry years recently. However, it was just beautiful amounts of rain to fall and get the coverage going. And so this is actually a video. So, oops, daisy. Okay, doesn't seem to like it's going to play. Anyway, see if there's a setting here. There we go. So it's playing. So this is the Leukina paddock. So we'll just do a flyover there. This is 20 mil of rain that fell not long after construction. You can see there we had the dozer driver was probably feeling quite frustrated with all the Leukina that he grows some himself. You can see it's being pushed out there. That's a spillway. There we go. It's all dead level still. Another spillway there. So there's a bit of a ridge line through there. And again, another spillway, bit of a ridge line, which also will be caught by that next one down there. So there's a gully. You can see that's higher through there up to the original regen area, which is all through there. That used to be all bare, and now it's got quite good coverage. So it is really quite steep, which is a bit hard to tell from that angle, but you can see it's quite a steep hill. Just trying to get a bit of the angle there with the terrain. Okay, that's pretty much it. Okay, so we'd just like to thank GCCA and the Queensland Government for what they've been able to help us come through to this point in achieving what we want, and also InFarm, Jerome, who I'll hand over to now.
What I'd like to do today is just show you some of the data that Myles has used to build those banks and kind of how the whole process worked. So, as you can see, this is Myles's farm, and the area that those banks were put up were up in this kind of northwestern corner. So we're going to go and focus in on those areas. And so what we did is, like Myles mentioned, we went and flew his entire property, and we got what we call a terrain model. So that's basically the elevation points across this whole entire farm. And so we used LiDAR, which is basically a laser scanner, to measure the ground, and we can get an elevation point across this whole entire farm. So we can go and zoom into this area, and I can say at this exact point here, what is the elevation? And it'll literally tell me that it is 247 meters above sea level at that particular point that I just clicked. And so from that, what we can do is determine how and where water is going to flow across the entire farm. And so we do that through one of our layers. And we can also estimate or understand how many meters squared of catch are above any point. And this becomes pretty critical when we talk about the energy of water, or the velocity, and understanding how much water is flowing through a particular point. And so I'll go and find a particular spot where we know we had an intercept with a bank. So we can see that there was a gully that was coming through here, or a low point. And if we go ahead here, we can start to determine that there were 3 hectares of catch above that point. So that number up here, which is 34132, is basically how many meters squared. And to get hectares, it's just 3 hectares. So we take 4 zeros off. And to give you a bit of an idea of just how much water is flowing through that particular point, if we had 3 hectares and we assumed that there was a 50 mil rain event, and we also assumed that 50% of that water would infiltrate into the ground, because And so that means only 50% would run off. Now, I think I remember Myles mentioning that only 25% would infiltrate into the soil, meaning that 75% of it would run off. And that would result in just over 1 meg worth of water flowing through that particular stream here, and through that particular contour bank. And so by understanding how many meters squared are flowing through a particular point, Myles can then start to plan and understand how big do my spillways need to be, how big do my banks need to be able to deal with that data, to be able to deal with that quantity of water. The other thing that we generate as part of that data set are the levels. So we can literally go and define these levels, and so we can actually go and see that this particular contour bank was designed on this level here. And so we can start to understand and plan, okay, if I'm going to move water along this contour, where might I spill the water? And we have another analysis here, which is called the which is basically looks at the slope and looks at the quantity of water to be able to determine where that water might actually flow and where we might be able to put those spillways. And so you can see where Myles has put those spillways, and we can see that that's where that water is then spreading below. And so all this data was really useful in terms of the way that it helped Myles plan it, and plan to use the data. But one of the main things that I think is interesting is the results of what that actually looked like. And so what we've got here is Myles's place, and this data here is actually an indication of the vegetation or the biomass that's growing. And this particular biomass analysis was done before Myles put in the contour banks. So I think Myles put him in October, and so this data was captured slightly before. And what you can see in this particular area is that there's a lot of this orange and dark brown area, which means that there's very little vegetation that's growing there, and you can notice that it's quite homogeneous in the way that it's not growing too much vegetation, or it's not photosynthesizing at that particular point in time. Then what happened is that Myles went and put in that data, and you can see that there's a little patch that's occurring just below that contour bank, and it seems like there is an increase in vegetation, especially when you compare it to what's happening above there. So you can see that dark green area as well as that lighter green, and there's much less of that orange or brown type color. And so I'll go and put the old analysis over the top of that so you can see exactly where those are. And so you can see that homogeneous brown area is quite even up above there. He then goes ahead and puts in that contour, and below that contour there seems to be a little bit more photosynthesis, which could be related to the extra water that he's captured from that contour bank going into the ground and then going down the hill and becoming available in the root zone. And so when we talk about landscape rehydration, be that natural sequence farming, or looking at some of the processes that yeomans might have used back in the 70s and 80s, we can start to look at that data and understand, okay, how is that water flowing through my country? Where can I start to slow spread and soak that water to optimize landscape rehydration and grow more grass? So there's a bunch of ecological and production functions that we can achieve by rehydrating that landscape, and we typically leverage the data to be able to understand, okay, where is that water going to flow? How are we going to then be able to use it? The other one that Myles mentioned was these basins. And so we call these the water management units. And so the way that we calculate these is we look at where is water going to flow out of your farm, and we start to figure out what that catchment is above it. And so when we're looking at how do we rehydrate landscapes, we really focus it in these water management zones. So how can we slow spread and soak in each of these different water management zones to optimize grass growth and to get as much water as we can into the ground to make ourselves potentially drought resilient and more productive. And so you can see this kind of salmon color, that is an entire catchment. And so if Myles was looking to optimise the flow or to optimise landscape rehydration in that whole area, we can see that the water is going to leave his place down the bottom here, but he's got the opportunity to slow spread and soak it throughout this entire catchment. And that's basically the area that Myles has really been working on to basically look at that landscape rehydration, so in that particular zone. Anyway, that's been a brief overview of the type of data that we provided to Myles. As part of this process, one of the things that we've been asked to do is to provide a little bit of value to you, the producers. And so if you are interested in seeing a low resolution terrain model analysis of your place, we are organising a free call for anyone that is interested in that. We'll jump on the call. All we need is your lot and plan numbers. And so we'll be able to then get a low resolution terrain model of your entire place, and then start to discuss, okay, do you have opportunities for landscape rehydration? And if you do, what might be the strategies that can help you so you can make a plan to improve your country and to reduce sediment runoff to the reef. And in order to do that, you can get in contact with us at InFarm. The easiest way to do that is to send us an email, or to give me a call on my mobile number. And so I've got all that information there on the screen for you to be able to get in contact if you are interested in doing that. And as I mentioned, it's completely free, and really like to thank DCCA and Myles for giving us the opportunity to show what we've done to try and help Myles on his country. Thank you.
Thank you, Myles, and thank you, Jerome. There's some really good photos and comparisons there, the befores and afters, and really to be able to see that the practice change and the influence through the work that you've done. And thank you very much for your time today.